This is Umaru Sanda Amadu. I'm the host of Face to Face on City TV. You're welcome to our channel. Do watch, subscribe, and share. It is the platform where we do the one-on-one interviews, do the discourse, do the analysis, and the conversations that matter to the growth of the country. You're welcome to Face to Face. The Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, has appeared before Parliament and made some announcements to the House. He has delivered the mid-year budget review. We are told he's not imposing more taxes on Ghanaians, he's not asking for more money, and he says that we are coming out of the woods. At least the term he uses is that we are seeing, the economy is seeing a turn. The minority side disagrees with this. On Face to Face today, my guest is a member of the minority side of Parliament. He's MP for Cape Coast South. He was once at the Ministry of Finance. The Honorable Kweku Ricketts Hagan is my guest. You're welcome to Face to Face. How are you doing?
Not bad at all. How are you?
I'm fine. Before we talk about constituency and talk about East Central Region and talk about the budget, let's talk about Bank of Ghana. What is the problem? What's happening?
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, good evening to our viewers. What is happening in Bank of Ghana is that Bank of Ghana has moved from its core duties as a central bank and is now doing the work of the physical side. Bank of Ghana is responsible for financial stability and monetary policies of this country. The government, and by government I mean the Ministry of Finance, is responsible for the physical policies of this country. Over the last 3 years, the Bank of Ghana has been continuously and consistently doing the work that should be done by the Ministry of Finance. Explain that. Okay. The problems that we have faced since they always like to use COVID and Russia-Ukraine, the problems that we have faced since the COVID and the Russian-Ukraine war is one that needs to be addressed with fiscal policies, not monetary policies. Mm-hmm. The challenges that we've had in terms of supply side and all that, they've basically been fiscal issues, not monetary. But when we have the Minister of Finance or the Ministry of Finance not doing what it ought to do, then the central bank, who normally targets inflation, and as a result of fiscal policies not being pursued, inflation was getting out of hand. So the central bank then steps in and says, this is my jurisdiction. Therefore, I have to do everything possible to bring inflation to the 8% plus or minus.
The result of what the BOG has to do comes from the work of the fiscal, from the finance ministry. For purpose of education, what's the difference between the fiscal role of the Ministry of Finance, which is the government, and then the central bank or the governor of the Bank of Ghana? The two are supposed to interlap, aren't they? Yes, so what's the difference, first of all? And then you tell us why you think that BOG is doing the job of the finance ministry.
Well, all the economic policies pursued by any government is usually done by the government.
So taxation.
All those things.
That's fiscal.
That's fiscal. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about taxation, expenditure,
yeah,
budget, which is revenue and all
borrowing
that,
and all of those.
Borrowing, all of them are done by government. Borrowing is slightly different.
Okay.
Borrowing is how all these things are funded.
Okay.
So you are borrowing, you are hoping to raise revenue to fund your expenditure. But when there is a gap between your revenue and expenditure, you have a deficit. So it's the deficit that you have to fund. And that is what usually results to you having to go out there and borrow, whether it's a domestic borrowing or external borrowing.
But that's again also government and Ministry of Finance.
Yes.
So BOG doesn't really play, unless you are coming to borrow from BOG.
BOG comes in.
Okay.
Because BOG is the bank
that receives
of the government.
Okay.
So the Bank of Ghana, the Ministry of Finance itself does not go out there to borrow money.
Okay.
It instructs the Bank of Ghana to do that on its behalf.
Okay.
So whether we are doing treasury bills, whether we are doing bonds, any other SPVs, the Dutch bond and all those things, they, if you like, contract it to the central bank to actually go engage the public or the institutions who lend money to us.
Okay. So that is the duty of the finance ministry.
Yeah.
What is the monetary role of the BOG? Is it just the CD? You are supposed to just focus on the CD?
The BOG, as they famously call it in economics textbooks, the bank of last resort. They are responsible for all the financial institutions registered in this country, starting from the banks and those underneath that. They are supposed to set the rules of operation for the banks, and that is where the banking regulations. So they play, as you rightly said, a supervisory role in the regulations that they have actually put in place.
So they are a regulator.
So they are regulated.
But they are also a player.
They are not in a player in a sense of lending money to the public.
Yeah.
But they are bank of last resort. Their money, the money they have, they lend it to
banks.
The banks. And the banks also go out there and lend it to. So you cannot go to central bank and say you are going to borrow money, you and I.
They won't give it to you.
They won't give it to you. But if you go to Standard Chartered or you go to GCB and you want to borrow money there and they don't have it, but they think they should give the money to you, they go to the central bank and borrow it from the central bank. So they have a rate at which they borrow from the central bank and the rate at which they will sell that money to you. In between, they make their profit to be able to go and pay back the central bank.
Okay. So the fiscal policies of the government could result in inflation going high or down. Now, that is where the BOG is supposed to also crack the whip. You are saying that the BOG is doing the job of the fiscal side, which is what the government should do. Explain that. How are they doing that?
Another function of the BOG is to supply money. You have something called money supply. So all the cash that comes into the system for us to spend does not come from the Ministry of Finance. It comes from the Bank of Ghana. Again, at the instruction of the Ministry of Finance. So when that happens, the printing of money can only be done by the central bank, not the government. But the government can instruct the central bank actually to print money for it.
Okay. Until
the separation of Bank of Ghana being independent and they judge what is happening in the economy. So they give out the CDs and stuff that we have. They keep track of all the money in the system, the paper money in the system, and look at whether the supply of the money in the system is enough or is not. So basically, they regulate interest rate.
So they decide how much money should be in circulation.
Yes.
How much hard cash should be in circulation.
And money in circulation is basically the interest rate levers. So basically, the direction of interest rate, which is the job, again, interest rate is a monetary policy, is the job of the bank to decide whether there's too much cash in the system, therefore they should take some out. In that case, they will tighten monetary policy, which is invariably the interest rate, to take money out, or they will relax the interest rate, which means they are pumping more money into the system.
And pumping more money is a problem.
Pumping more money is the problem when it goes beyond the threshold.
Okay.
Because money should always be pumped into the system to be able to balance how much inflation and everything else that we have going on in the system, and making sure that there's adequate cash for government in its operations.
Okay.
Government is the biggest spender. So contracts and all that of government are awarded. And sometimes government needs money. Salaries are paid by government, not central bank. But the central bank needs to make that money available through the controller to be able to. Controller is a function under the Ministry of Finance.
Right. Just a quick segue. Recently, there was public outpour because Cecilia Benadapa had in her home over $1 million and then millions of Ghana cedis in cash. Now, the central bank governor has said that it is a worrying phenomenon for people to have cash in their homes. How can the bank intervene in such matters?
That takes us into the third function of the central bank.
Okay.
The central bank, as I said earlier, responsible for inflation and responsible for interest rate. Interest rate is interlinked with inflation because what you do to interest rate shows the direction of inflation. The third one is exchange rate. The central bank has a reserve where all foreign monies that comes into this country, whether through export revenue, whether through taxation, tax revenue or all that, are deposited at the central bank. So the hard currency, which comes as a result of whether you go to the Eurobond market or you borrow, from our bilateral borrowing from foreign land,
or cocoa,
all comes in hand, or cocoa. These are the exports. Gold. They all
or
come in.
the consortium of banks that buy the cocoa. What's it called?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the syndicated cocoa,
syndicated loan. Yes, that one.
All come to the central bank as part of the reserve. Now, the strength of the reserve, which is hard currency, no cedis, hard currency, and let's base it as dollars, is what shows the strength of how Ghana can respond to any debt obligation or to anything that we need to pay in foreign.
So that's a buffer.
That's the buffer. So the exchange rate, which is mainly the cedi against the dollar, is basically controlled to an extent by the central bank. Because the central bank can regulate, just as they put cedi in the market, can also regulate how much dollars we have in the system or the lack of it. And they do this with the cedi. When there are too many dollars or too much dollars in the system, it means that there are less cedis. So what they will normally do is that they will use the cedis that they have to buy the dollars from the system. By that, they create scarcity for the dollar, and the dollar then appreciates. If the other way around, they think that cedi has depreciated so much, then what they will do, and because cedi appreciates too much, means that there's scarcity of dollars in the system. So what they don't do
pump more
dollars in the system to buy the cedis out of the system.
Okay.
So that cedi will be reduced in the system. So that's basically the mechanism for controlling exchange rate. Okay. Apart from the other factors that create the situation itself.
Okay.
But in terms of trying to resolve it, this is what practically, together with other policies, mainly physical, to do this. But that's the central bank's rule.
In the minister's case, does the BOG have any role to play in preventing things like that, or you can't really regulate how much someone lives in their bedrooms?
Well, we are not, fortunately or unfortunately, you are not in anyone's bedroom. So you wouldn't know how much they have in there. But it's actually against the law to be keeping that much dollars in anybody's house.
It's against the law?
Yes, it's against the law. I mean, you will have to have a good explanation why you should have such money. $1 million sitting in your house. Especially in this case, when the person we are talking about is actually a government official. So $1 million sitting in your house means that you have taken $1 million out of the economy. Therefore, you are creating the situation that will
an artificial shortage.
So God knows how many ministers or how many government officials have dollars sitting in their account. Maybe they can save the economy better than the IMF.
But there's no law that obligates me to go save my money in the bank. I can keep my money under my pillow, right?
Yes, you can keep your money under your pillow. If you have $5,000 or $10,000 that you intend to do something with in there, especially considering the economic climate that we are in, where you cannot actually predict where the dollar or the cedi will be tomorrow, and you need some money urgently, the only way you can hedge it is to keep the dollars with you for that short period that you need it. If you have 1 million, brother, that's a different league altogether. And maybe perhaps no written law. I haven't looked in the Bank of Ghana's books. No written law, but it is a worrying situation, and that you are actually keeping dollars and creating artificially, because we're only talking about 1 million here. We don't know how many else are elsewhere.
Okay, so let's go back to the issue of the rules of the Finance Ministry and the rules of the Bank of Ghana. You are saying that Bank of Ghana is now doing physicals. How is the Bank of Ghana doing that? Is Bank of Ghana awarding contracts, imposing taxes? I'm not seeing that happening.
Well,
explain to me how.
There are certain funding. The expenditure funding is a fiscal policy, or it's a fiscal job done by the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
When the Ministry of Finance hasn't got money, but they are borrowing money, or Bank of Ghana is lending them money to spend, that's a fiscal policy being carried out by a monetary, somebody who's in charge of monetary administration.
But it's a fall-on bank for the government, and the government can always fall on that bank.
Well, we have a rule that says that you cannot take more than 5% of what is it called, the previous year's revenue from the bank. And they have clearly exceeded that.
By what percentage?
You remember not too long ago, we're talking about 20% and above.
That's a breach of the law.
It is a breach of the law. And up to date, it has not been explained properly. I remember when some of us raised this issue on the floor, we were presented answers by the Bank of Ghana. That is what has brought us to where we are. And some of the answers given to us were not even logical. They were, if you read last year's budget, and you look at the explanation of that 22 billion or so, if you remember, that was sitting as money haven't been given to the central bank. They were talking about repos and all that. And I remember pointing it out on the floor that, do you really know what repos are? Repos are repurchasing. So when you issue a bond, and then you think that the bond you have issued out there is being treated cheaply, but you think you being on the other side, having an asymmetry information that other people don't have, it's just like shares. You believe that your share that is out there should be valued more than the market is valuing it. One of the ways you can increase the price is by that corporate entity to buy back its own shares. So buying back its own shares, when you translate it to bonds, is what is called repo, repurchasing agreement.
Okay.
They are basically the same thing. Therefore, if you are claiming that money you have given to somebody as the Ministry of Finance is a repo, then you probably don't understand repo. Because what you are then saying is that you are taking money. If there's any repo, the issuer of bonds in this country is not the Bank of Ghana, but the government of the Republic. But it is done on its behalf.
By the BOG.
By the BOG. Therefore, if you want to do a repo, it is the government of BOG that should be paying the public, not the public or the central bank paying the government.
This 60 billion loss loss recorded by the BOG as announced by the Auditor General, is this the biggest we are seeing in recent times, or it is a normal thing? And what does it mean to our central bank?
It's actually the biggest in the history of Ghana. I know times have changed. You know, we've been independent for over 60 years. And obviously, the quantums of money we talk about today is not the same as we talk about in the 60s or 70s. However, for a central bank to incur such a loss, where the central bank does not operate in the space of lending money generally to everyone, and all banks, as they are still in existence, are going concerns, there cannot be such loss by the Bank of Ghana.
Because if they lend money, they're supposed to
get the money back unless that bank has collapsed.
Yes, so that's something you should consider. There was a financial sector cleanup. Maybe those banks have collapsed. The BOG has to intervene and deal with all this. COVID-19 came, you know, the BOG had to inject some money to deal with that matter. And then this domestic debt exchange program too. So it is a fair loss, isn't it?
Well, it is not a fair loss until we know the breakdown of actually how we lost that, or how the central bank lost that money. The auditors have told us that, look, this is what we have found in the books, that the Bank of Ghana has lost this much money. It is now on the Bank of Ghana to come and give us a breakdown of this loss. That 20 billion went into, as you have rightly, the financial bailout, which itself was a useless thing to do anyway.
Okay.
And it's a subject probably for another day. Again, this is a creation of physical, the people who look at the physical side, who created this closure of banks, that the banks were insolvent. Until that thing was done, nobody saw any bank run in this country. Until the announcement came that certain banks and financial institutions were going to be closed down. That's what caused the panic and the bank run. But that's a subject for another day. You talked about COVID. The COVID cost, most of it, yes, the central bank supported, but most of it actually came from outside. 1 billion from the World Bank, IMF, money from stabilization fund.
So it shouldn't shake up the central bank.
It should not shake up the central bank that much.
Now,
because everything that happened during the COVID period was actually financed by external sources mostly, and by our own stabilization fund and other funds that were raised in Ghana, chaired by, I think it was the Chief Justice or something, for private people to contribute to.
Public COVID-19 fund.
Yeah.
If the BOG incurs a loss, how do we recover that? Does he have to go and print money to replace the lost money, or that would generally affect the economy? Does it have to go after those who took the money? How can this be cured?
Well,
60 billion, that's a big deal.
Who did they lend the money to? That's the breakdown we are looking for. If it is in the other books, it should be in the other side. This is a liability. So the other side of the liability should be in the books of the banks who took the money.
So you go knock it off.
So if we get a list, then we'll find out from the banks, why are you still declaring profits when you owe the central bank that you haven't paid? Because they say the banks are doing so well.
Yeah.
And you haven't paid the money. If it is government, why did you give this much to a government? So you have breached the law. If there is any exceptional circumstance, which COVID was,
you explain.
You will explain. In that case, it will end us up a write-off. Write-off is the same as printing money. So in that case, it's inflation and other things
of 60 billion
that is going to be suffering, and it will invariably, as you know, what inflation, cost of living, and all that are going to go up if they continue this way.
And the fundamentals will look bad. This is face to face on.
Fundamentals are bad already.
This is face to face on City TV. My name is Umaru Sandam, and my guest is General Kweku Ricketts Hagan. He served in various portfolios. He was Deputy Finance, Deputy Trade. He's been Central Regional Minister, but he's currently MP for Cape Coast South. We were talking about the state of affairs in Ghana's economy. We just talked about the BOG. When we come back, Finance Minister Kweku Ricketts Hagan presented the mid-year budget review to the House. What was his assessment? And what's the fact that no taxes and he's not asking for more money? What does that mean? Please stay with us.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
You're welcome back. This is Face to Face on City TV. My name is Umaru Sandamadu here with the Honorable Kweku Ricketts Hagan. We are discussing the state of the economy. The Minister of Finance, Kweku Ricketts Hagan, appeared before the House on Monday and presented the mid-year budget review. Typically what happens mid-year budget review, the government comes and says, listen, in the beginning of the year, we said to you that we wanted 100 billion to do A, B, C, D. Things have changed. We want more money now. Give us permission to go and spend more. Or we have decided that we are fine, which is what they've decided now, that they don't have to go for more money. They are also not introducing new taxes. What is your assessment of his presentation?
Well, first of all, I think it was a missed opportunity. You know, mid-year review being done in the middle of an IMF program should be presented differently, because the budget was read in November of last year for this year. In between, we've gone onto this IMF program. So you expect the ministers to come and tell us the impact of this IMF program on the budget that he read in November and where we are going from here. And I didn't see that in the budget. You should also be signaling to us, the citizens, and also the international financial community, and I'm talking about the Eurobonds, the commercial loans, that we are actually getting onto the path, on the right track, to build a sustainable economy, to reduce our debts. All these things have not started happening, and they are not going to happen for some time. If we will get out of the situation that we're in, we are probably looking at about 2027, 2028. I think there have been a lot of projections for that. So for the finance minister to come and do the usual praising of themselves, that we have turned the corner, and I'm saying you are not even out of the woods yet, for you to say you have turned a corner. Turn a corner on your own programs for the last 7 years, or you have turned a corner on about 1 month or so IMF program that you have just started. You haven't turned any corner. You should be humble to explain to Ghanaians that, look, times are tough, things are difficult. This IMF program is going to give us the relief that we need for us to be able to implement the programs that will help us build the economy.
But are they not supposed to give us some confidence and also give us some assurances? Instead of just coming up and always crying doom, he should give us some positive news, which is what he's done, to rally the nation around.
I do agree with that. That partly government is about giving hope. But when the situation is also hopeless, you must let your citizens know and tell us how you are going to build hope out of that hopelessness.
But they have done that. The president has conceded, the minister himself has conceded. So what else?
Conceding is not enough. It's not a lip service. You must show in your actions. If I tell you I'm going to give you $1 million, you should have heard somewhere that
you have 1 million.
My house help has taken $1 million from my house.
I'm not going to follow you on this shade you are throwing.
If you haven't heard that and you believe that I'll be able to give you $1 million, then
I have a
I'm
problem.
not only deceiving you, but you are helping me deceive you.
Yeah.
So the situation is not that good. Ghana is technically insolvent.
The entirety of the
yes,
nation.
Of nation. Financially, economically, is technically insolvent. Because if you look at our liabilities against our asset, and by our liabilities, I'm talking about our debt, our appropriation, and all the other things that constitute SOEs, monies that are owed, which are contingent liability. These are all our liabilities. You look at our asset, which includes the export revenue that we get, the tax revenue, the reserves, and all that we have, and you net it together.
We are in a deficit.
We are in a deficit.
But is that not a
deficit? You are insolvent.
But we've always been running a deficit budget.
Well,
it's not a new thing.
Deficit budget is different from deficit budget is more or less a central government deficit.
Okay.
Insolvency is about the whole nation.
But SOEs are part of the central government. They've always been part of the central government.
Well, what is not when you are calculating deficit, you don't add your GDP.
Okay.
GDP is not part of your deficit. Your deficit is basically the revenue you're able to rake in less your expenditure, or if your expenditure is more, then you create that deficit. When your GDP comes in, and when I was talking about asset and liability, I'm also talking about your GDP as an asset.
The total...
So your total GDP of this country.
That's what you're using as...
total debt. If I'm calculating whether the country is solvent or not solvent, I have to add all our gold monies we get. I have to add the whole GDP, because the whole GDP of Ghana is Ghana's asset. If our debt, that's why we calculate debt to GDP. If your debt to GDP goes over 100%, it means your liability as a country, not only in a budget, as a country, is more than your asset. So you are insolvent. It
means that the minister had no option than to say he was not going to ask for more money.
Nobody would give him money. You see, this idea that minister comes, oh, I don't want any money, bluffing. Minister is not bluffing. He can't get it. Don't forget that Parliament does not mandate the minister to go and spend, as we said earlier. We mandate the minister or the Ministry of Finance to go and look for what he wants to spend. So it's not like we give the money to the minister and go and spend. He has to go and look. So he who is going to do the looking realizes that there's no money he can find anywhere. So he comes and tells you, I don't need money.
So he can't even tell you to approve because there's...
Is he going to Eurobond market?
It's shut down.
It's shut down. Bilateral, we are negotiating. All our external debt, we haven't even gone to the negotiation yet. Our domestic debt, we are struggling with pensioners who are picketing in front of the ministry almost every time. We can't even, and I said it in the chamber, we are so incompetent, not only about accumulating this debt, but we can't even restructure it.
But they've done a fair job at the restructuring.
Very poor job. Very poor job. And I know you've been following this. The eligible amount of our 190 billion domestic debt plus domestic debt that we have, 137 billion qualified or was eligible for this program. They told us that the IMF says, on sitting with the IMF, 80% is the target. If we're able to restructure 80% of the 137, we are fine. Why would the finance minister go through the pay? I mean, when they were going through, I said, what is wrong with these guys? Look, our debts, our pension fund was around 27 billion then. It keeps changing because of, obviously,
the inflation.
Inflation, people retiring, dying, all sorts of things. Okay, so initially you put in pension fund, you excluded individual pension bondholders. Don't see the sense there. But if you're going to exclude bonds, you should exclude all pension, because these are social protection money. So you should not even touch it. IMF will not even support you
to touch it.
So you come and then you touch one, you leave the other. That's inconsistent. He was saying in the budget that they've been diligent and resolute. There is no resolute about this domestic debt exchange. It's basically been flip-flopping. Today, pension funds are in. Tomorrow, they are not. Tomorrow, individual bondholders are in. They are not.
And now there's a new statement issued by the finance minister on pension.
The finance minister that his door is still open.
Yeah.
But Umaru.
But it's voluntary.
137. The voluntary they did the last time round, less than 5% of pension fund came on board. That is why they are still chasing them. If pension people have picketed and you have agreed that you're going to take pension funds out entirely, that's about 27 billion. Out of your 137 billion, that's 110 billion. 110 as a percentage of 137 is 80%.
So you need to cover everything.
So threshold is covered. You don't need pension funds to reach the 80%. So I didn't know which mathematics.
Then it means that the 110 billion has not succeeded. The restructuring there has not succeeded. That's why they need to extend the tentacles further.
Because they thought that voluntarily pension funds will come on board with the threat that if you don't come on board, the train will leave and you might not be able to.
Yeah.
But they were resolute that they weren't coming on board, including the CJ, former CJ,
Chief Justice,
that they won't come on board. So they went without them. The problem they have at the moment is that they have created a two-tier bond system in this country.
The safe one and the unsafe one.
Discourage investment into this country. Because now we have people who are holding bonds that are protected, supposedly, by government, and those who are holding bonds that out of their stubbornness, they will put it.
It's worthless.
It's worthless, or they don't know when coupon payment will come, or they don't know if maturity comes, they will get the money.
Especially when the government has told you that this is a safer one.
This is the safer one. But then again, we are not holding your hands. I mean, in a country like the one...
Voluntary by force is what some of them have called it.
Absolutely.
But has the minister not put forth any measures and policy plans before you that you say that this actually was going to get out of the wood?
Well...
You don't see anything positive from what he delivered?
No, I don't see it. I mean, and it's quite troubling. As I said yesterday, fortunately or unfortunately, most of the government side guys were sleeping or not interested.
Oh,
that's look at the pictures.
That's unfair.
I mean,
during the presentation
I'm
of the...
referring you to the pictures. I believe at some point...
You mean during the
presentation? Some of our people were calling them that wake up and all that. If you were in the chamber, you would have heard.
They should wake up and collect their money.
Wake up and see. And then the moment the minister finished the statement, there was this applaud coming from people who were sleeping. I mean...
That's not fair. They played active roles.
It may not be fair coming from me, but you watch the video. It's a photo, no lie.
You people were also not booing like you usually do. Maybe you were also asleep.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised.
That you were also asleep.
It was a very uninteresting budget. So one thing is, look, finance and economics are hard as it is. People don't even want to listen to finance ministers and all that. But this was an exceptionally boring media review. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of us
what do you think
are dozed off or something.
You suspect you may have slept. Go look at the videos.
Being a finance person.
Go look.
So I'm warning you, in case you watch the video, you see me sleeping.
So I should understand. But he didn't touch on taxes, as in he didn't impose new taxes. That's a positive, no?
Well, it is positive, obviously, that, we know that we need taxes for government to run. But when you have overburdened people with taxes, it gets to a point taxes become counterproductive. And we've gotten to that level. You know what happened to the e-levy? Though they blame it on opposition.
People caused their problems.
Ghanaians, majority of them, were basically not in favor of it. And I believe people have found round ways to get things
ways
done.
around it, yeah.
Yeah, ways around it to get things done. But the thing is that the government's belief And I heard it from a very, very close quarters that yes, people are going to be disinterested, because I raised the issue in Uganda and other places where this became counterproductive. And they say, oh, just gas for Ghanaians, they will stop using it for about 3 months and then they will come back because they will not have any other option. Probably they are right. Probably that is what is happening. But it is not a progressive tax. And they realize that taxes could become counterproductive. Therefore, they've got to a point where they probably, if they introduce more taxes, they will actually harvest less.
You are part of a government that was criticized for having nuisance taxes on cutlasses, condoms, et al. You were a deputy minister, the finance minister at the time. Sure. Taxing is not wrong after all. So well, if this government is doing that, it's a revenue mobilization mechanism.
Some taxes are wrong. And we all do get it wrong from time to time. You know, when you focus so much on revenue, and you need revenue to do things, you might think that every tax should be picked. But you've got to be sensible about it. About the taxes, we made some mistake with some taxes, I must admit. And if they weren't, but we have sunset clauses to some of these taxes that when they serve the purpose that we need them for,
you end them.
We end them. So you would expect that special import levy, COVID taxes will have sunset clauses so that when the COVID is actually no longer with us, you will not be imposing COVID tax.
But the COVID is no longer here, but the ramifications or the repercussions that COVID left behind would stay with us for a while. You need to have the tax around to stabilize that, don't you think so?
You don't need to.
Why not? Because if there are businesses that have collapsed, the taxes that you have imposed for COVID would be used to, revive those businesses in the long run.
The interesting thing is that we got the money during the COVID time to revive companies, and the monies were diverted. So it didn't get to its destination. That is why companies are still collapsing, because they never received the money. If you are not part of the friends and family, or you are not part of the cronies, you are not going to get any of this funding. Some were brought here that bring your people from your constituency who are running businesses to get. The money didn't come. The next thing, they shared the money. You had a lady, I don't know whether she was contesting an election or whatever, who was talking about monies being shared. I have had people in my constituency on the other side telling me how much COVID money came into the country for them to misuse. What we are paying for now is not a COVID tax. We are paying reckless tax. We are paying tax for our recklessness and our inefficiency.
Setekpe served as deputy minister for 4 years and got promoted to a minister. You have also served as deputy minister, not only at finance, you also served at trade, which means you can qualify to be a... No, going by that, I'm just saying that you could qualify as a minister if we should go by the 4-year cycle. Sure. What would you have done differently if you were the Minister of Finance now?
Well, first of all, you're talking about now, but I can also tell you what I wouldn't have done.
Prevention.
To what has brought us to where we are.
Okay, what would you have done to prevent?
I wouldn't have done the financial bailouts because it was not actually needed.
You wouldn't have saved banks?
Well, there was no saving of any bank.
They said those banks were destined for collapse.
They said, when you hear a bank run somewhere and the government intervenes, you hear of a bank, of people who have gone to a bank that they are going to get their money. Did you hear any bank where people have queued that they are going to take their money out before the central government intervened?
But it was a due diligence they did. Prevention is better than cure.
One issue, and that is completely different.
Yeah.
Okay, that is where people would, even that one was caused by central bank, because the central bank questioned the legitimacy of NAM1 because they did not understand the product they were selling, whether it was a Ponzi or not. The central bank itself is not widely spread in terms of, and the Securities and Exchange, it's not widely spread in terms of its coverage of the oversight responsibility that it provides for a number of financial products that are in the market these days that goes beyond the traditional banking. So there are things that are being done. A lot of financing transactions are going on online that nobody knows about, that nobody is taxing, that nobody is questioning. One day when it collapses, that's when you hear of it. During our time, and if you're referring to during our time, there were issues of some problems with banking, with some of the banks. There were issues with board executives using monies in a way they should not. Laws were being tightened. What we needed was to provide a proper governance and oversight responsibility for these banks. Get some board members and even owners of the banks removed from those banks. Sentenced in terms of not being able to work in the financial sector for about 10 years or so. So that the banks will restructure themselves, getting a new board in place. Central Bank enhance its supervisory responsibility, and these banks will be doing fine today and will be plugging the gap that is being created as a result of this bailout that they've done, using over 20 billion or so, which is now sitting in Bank of Ghana's books
as a debt. So you wouldn't have done the financial sector cleanup. What else would you have done to prevent what we have now, if you were finance minister?
I wouldn't have done 1D, 1F the way it's been done. And the Ministry of Finance has a say, because the Ministry of Finance underwrites on behalf of the Ministry of Trade and Industry any financing that is given to itself or given to anybody who is getting involved in 1D, 1F. Because they tell you 1D, 1F is not a government funding program. Mm-hmm. It's being funded by the private sector.
Yeah.
Who is funding the private sector? The government of Ghana has given money in 2019 or 2020 budget, an amount of money, I think in 2020, amount of part of the money we borrowed from the Eurobank and bilateral was supposed to be given to banks who were going to lend money to
1D, 1F beneficiaries.
1D, 1F, those who are going to benefit.
But that's what government is supposed to do, provide the avenue, which is what they did.
Then you can't call it that it's a private sector funding. So because of that, the government, because if you are the one providing the money, then you should have the interest on making sure that that money goes to where they said they were going to spend.
So strict monitoring.
Yes. But it was given to private banks who gave it to people who were recommended by ministers and government officials to go and get money there. The monies were paid for them. Probably some kickbacks were given, and those companies will never pay that money.
So you would have also avoided free SHS, I'm guessing?
No.
You wouldn't have?
I wouldn't have. Free HS implementation, which Kenneth Riata was spot on, is what almost all of us have been questioning.
So it should have been compartmentalized.
Look, I cannot ask, or you cannot ask me, Umaru, big guy at City, that I should pay your child's school fees.
Oh.
And not only am I asking you not to pay your child's school fees, I'm actually preventing you
from paying
if you want to.
And if I try, you will sack my headmaster.
Absolutely.
So you don't agree to something like that?
So, look, it should be means tested. People who need the money should pay for the money. Look, it works simple like those who are in construction. If you are building an estate in a place and high-end, like high net worth individuals, you are building very expensive houses. If you go to most high net worth places, they have also built low-cost houses, because the rich people who are living in those mansions will have to be served by the people who have low income.
So for every mansion there should be a boys' quarters.
Yes, for every mansion there is a boys' quarters. So for people who don't have the means to buy those, this is what we are trying to get people who are on the low income to be able to buy houses. Who cannot afford? You increase the price of the expensive houses so you can get extra money
to support the ones below.
That's how free education should be.
This is face to face.
People who have money, like you,
I don't have plenty,
should pay your school fees, so that by you paying your worst school fees, there will be some extra from there.
They use that to take care of
the poor villagers' school fees.
This is Face to Face on City TV. My name is Umaru Sandamado. The Honorable Kweku Ricketts Hagan is my guest. We are just talking about the economy. When we come back, 2024, John Mahama has been chosen by the NDC. MPP is yet to settle on a candidate. What is going to be the campaign like? He comes from a region that is very significant in our elections. When NDC lost in 2016, he was a regional minister. I like to taunt him about how they lost almost all their seats in that region. I ask him how they're going to recover those seats now. Please stay.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and Star Times box. City TV, it's your world.
You're welcome back. This is Face to Face on City TV. I'm speaking to someone who was once at the Ministry of Finance. You were saying that you have a difficulty with how the government is dealing with the debt, domestic or the external one?
Well, first of all, the way they have done the domestic debt, they have botched it up, basically. And as you said, a letter came today. They are still asking pension people to come on board.
Yeah.
They don't need to. The government is wasting too much time on the domestic debt exchange. It's about time they go to where we owe people 14 billion euros and all that to start talking to them. They have unilaterally suspended interest payments and other payments, servicing our debt, external debt. Look, these external debt are not free. This is where your interest or coupons charged on your bonds are much higher, and they are in dollars. So if you leave them and you are not paying, the dollar side or the dollar accumulation of your debt begins to escalate. Therefore, if your currency is depreciating, then your debt in terms of cedis will be astronomical if you don't pay attention to it. So immediately we should be going in that direction and start negotiating. The problem that we are not able to go to these guys are that they are seasoned negotiators. They are not like your average Joe pension, These are people who have been doing debt structuring probably all their life. And we cannot go to them with the attitude of today you are in, tomorrow you are not in business. Therefore, there is some caution or panic on the government side. Nothing else. And we are dancing around the problem. Let's go and see China. China is the big...
Yeah, but that's the thing. So if they are not willing to play ball, they are not willing to even meet us at the table, then we have to be tactical in meeting them. The China angle is a problem. We had to go beg... Which country was that to go and talk to China for us? Yes, one of the European countries. Was it Spain?
I've always said that China is not a big elephant in the room. They have been saying China is the big elephant. How much do we owe China? Less than 2 billion US dollars. How much do we owe Eurobond? About 14 billion.
So let's focus on Eurobond. And
so go to where your big problems are. China does not work with rating agencies to downgrade you, though the rating agencies may pick that. But the Eurobond market or the capital market work with rating agencies who can hurt you. The more bad things people say about you, the less credible you become. Therefore, rating agencies...
And that's why the president was concerned about what the rating agencies were doing.
Yeah, but the president was completely misinformed about how these rating agencies work. Anyway, he was even talking about creating our own rating agency.
Yeah.
And I thought, who is advising the president? The president doesn't know what he's talking about. You are creating your own rating agencies and you borrow from who? Kweku Ricketts Hagan has his own trading, rating agencies. But I still borrow from Umaru. But I don't like Umaru's ratings. So when I borrow from you, I rate myself.
Set your own.
You think you're going to give me money? If you want to stop rating agencies internationally, stop borrowing. Then they will rate you.
Otherwise, they would rate you.
They will rate you. Right now, we are falling off the radar of rating. We are junk X squared.
No, you're making the thing sound too hopeless.
What's the junk? What's the rate? We are junk status.
Yes, but the way you are making it is sounding too hopeless.
If we don't tell ourselves the truth, and we live with this self-fulfilling prophecy, that if we say good things about ourselves, they will become good.
If you talk down on your own economy, it will collapse on your head.
Wow.
So be positive a bit.
That's what the president said.
Election 2024 is coming. Central region is crucial for you. How is it looking for NDC?
Well,
because if you don't win Central region,
I think we have Central region, as we know, together with a few other regions, I believe Greater Accra, Western region, can be a swing. But maybe Central region is a very, very swing place. Central region, we don't even care to vote against our own if we don't believe in you at that stage. Whenever we believe in you, we will vote for you. And the man up there knows the story better than I do.
Which man?
Professor Mills, who was, his own people voted against him for some number of years. Finally, when they came to understand what he stood for, they voted for him massively. That is Central region. When they say swing, we don't vote for you because we are the same color of us or we have the same
ethnicity. In 2016, they dealt you a heavy blow. 2020, you recovered some of your seats.
Yeah.
What are your plans for 2024?
Well, what happened in 2016 in the Central region is that I think we took our eyes off the ball. When we realized that we could be in serious problem because of all the negative things that were being said in the region, and being a swing region, we tend to vote on issues more than ethnicity and all those things. So the issues that were spoken against us at that time made the people change their mind on us. We didn't react early. When we decided to react, don't forget, I became a regional minister in the election year.
Yeah.
That should tell you something. I went into Central region
Firefights.
to firefight.
But there was no water.
Because when I was being sent there, then we knew that we had a problem. Unfortunately, they thought I was the fireman to go and put the fire up. But when I went there, the bush
was
completely gone. And then, since I was using the, what do you call the fire?
You're using spray can. You're using water can instead of kafra.
Air helicopter.
Nana Kafra. You have John Mahama on your ballot paper.
Yeah.
The NPP is going to settle on 1 of 10. You have the economic whiskey, Dr. Baumia. You have the trade aficionado, Alan Kojo Chamantin. You have a number of other persons in there. Which one of them is scaring you the most?
Well, I think, to be fair, we have to let them worry themselves about who they want to elect. But I think the consensus is that it's a two-horse race. That's the consensus. There's probably a maverick there who can create a problem.
From your region?
Yeah, who can create a problem for them. Possibly not winning it, but probably causing someone to lose. Whichever one comes will be beaten by the President Mahama and the NDC.
Yeah, sure. They say they are breaking the 8.
Well, they can break the 8 by not coming again.
So they will end the 8.
So they will end the 8.
Instead of breaking it.
Yeah, when you end it, you've actually broken it as well.
Yeah.
So, for me, obviously, I'm not to advise them. But we all know that the Vice President has lost so much credibility, especially when it comes to the economy. Coming from a background of being an economist, that the election next year and for the foreseeable future is going to be about the economy. Therefore, Ghana will be looking for a team that not necessarily headed by an economist, but a team who understands Ghana's economy and can drive out of the mess that we are in. So, Dr. Baumia not having any more credibility will probably not be a match at all. Mr. Alan Chamantin could easily push himself aside and said, I wasn't part of it. I was really being used to pretend we are united. D1F, which is a central function of Ministry of Trade and Industry. As you were saying, you mentioned I've worked as a Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. My job there at the ministry, I was responsible for industry. So I was in charge of the building of Commanding Sugar Factory and others.
Which now imports sugarcane from Brazil.
Wow. That's another story for another day. So if you look at it, it tells you clearly that Alan could play the card. He's already started it. That I advise them.
So he washed his hands off.
Wash his hands off. But that will not help him. You know, when you are in the same soup, you are a fish. and you are in a soup of
crabs.
a goat meat or crab soup, you can't come out of the soup and pretend that you were not in it.
You will end up in the mouth.
You were a fish.
Let's leave it here.
You will all end up on the fufu.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
My pleasure.
That's Honorable Kweku Ricketts Hagan, former Central Regional Minister, former Deputy Finance and Trade Minister, and Member of Parliament for Cape Coast South. My name is Umaru Sandamadu. This has been Face to Face on City TV. Thank you for watching.